Well, wires only go so far.
Hi, a very good evening to everyone, and thank you very much for joining our showcase. And in this showcase, we're just fundamentally just going to talk about the video just now was just to give you guys a prelude of what we are looking at in the perspective of private wireless networking, especially with industrial grade private wireless networking in the journey to transform industrials into what we call Industrial 4.0, taking advantage of Industry 4.0. So in this section, we're just going to talk about the needs of the industry and what really is going to drive digital transformation. Many of us have talked about digital transformation, but then what really does it take for an industry to take advantage, or for enterprises to take advantage of Industry 4.0? And where is the industry, and where are we as most of us who are here as an industry, where do we see the industry moving towards, and what are the key steps moving towards it? So I'm hoping that in the next half an hour, we'll be talking about some of that. And the video just now was just talking about where Nokia is positioning as Go Allwhere, where we believe you need connectivity pervasively everywhere, connecting everything that is available out there. And that's really the thought process that we are. And we're looking at how can we go from now to the next step in taking advantage of that digital transformation. So, but before we start, I thought we'll just do a quick safety sharing. Right? So if you guys are in a mission critical industry, we will always start with a safety sharing before we get started. There's no safety wear that's required today, and I'm sure most of us are taking on to this platform virtually. But I do want to encourage you guys to please wash your hands, take good care of yourself, avoid close contacts if you are already not feeling well. But above all, please take care of yourself. And I'm hoping each one of us are in really good health as we go about and learning in this next moment. Now, if we take a step and say, what is fourth industrial revolution all about? And I just want to just kind of like address that topic before we go about what exactly is the transformation that we're looking for. So when we look at Industry 4.0, the critical factor to always remember is in the past 15 years, most of ICT investments have gone into what we call digital industries. So if you look at Uber's, Grab, Airbnb as an example, a lot of significant investment have actually gone into these industries because these are the industries that's taking advantage and revolutionizing the business model, how we engage with them, all of that, they are taking advantage of it. Now, but if you look at the physical industries, utilities, power plant, factories, not as much investment in ICT have gone into these enterprises. But then when we look at share of GDP, you realize the significant imbalance here because these physical industries actually contribute to GDP at a much more larger scale, versus what we look at the share of GDP versus these digital industries. And that's really the transformation that we see the fourth industrial revolution needs to take, because it needs to take the advantage of ICT investments into these physical industries, because the physical industries are the one that is driving the fourth industrial revolution. So what's exactly happening when you look at it is how then can all of these industries, particularly physical industries, take advantage of ICT investments to drive into things like how can they increase productivity, how can they look at investing into different areas. So all of them are looking at how can I take my legacy old infrastructure that I have, but then transform that using digital means, because then I'm able to have what we call a digital twin concept. And a digital twin really looks at taking a physical representation, making it digital, because when we can make it digital, we are able to sense it, control it, monitor it, and do an action against it. And that's really what we're talking about, the fourth industrial revolution, because it's really taking these physical industries into the next area. And that's really what we're really trying to look at from this perspective. Now, you might be wondering, I've talked about physical industries. So if I'm an enterprise today, and where exactly is it that we have seen transformation and where we haven't seen transformation yet? So if you look at the typical industries, and most of us, some of us are working from home. So we broadly categorize services that are consumed by an enterprise into four main domains. So first domain you have is employee mobile services. All of us have a handset, all of us have a laptop that's connected to, if you are remote workers, you're connected to some sort of means. So you rely on what we call either the mobile subscription or a fixed broadband connectivity at home, just like I'm connected right now in my broadband connection at home. Now, if you take the next step and we start looking at, all of us have a laptop, all of us have an application, e-leave platform, all of that continues, right? So all of us have that, and that's also provided as a service. And then we have the more critical ones, which is business critical and mission critical. And we'll talk there a little bit more. Now, when we look at each one of these domains, what we will realize is each one of them have different requirements, and different service providers, the enterprise, the providers of these services are very different. So the focus when we look at physical industries, the bulk of the transformation that we think that's going to happen in the industry is really around business and mission critical applications. And that's really the critical crux here. And we define this normally as operational technology versus the employee mobile services and how we connect to the app, our systems as IT requirements. So we're very used to IT requirements, but not really as OT requirements, because OT tends to lag behind. And that's the whole paradigm that we're trying to shift, because this is really where we can take advantage of Industry 4.0, the transformation. So let me give you an example. What do we mean by business and mission critical applications? So there are three main characteristics of that. So number one, continuous operations. So imagine a power plant, imagine a factory, imagine an oil and gas platform. They are operating 24/7, continuous operations. Number two, productivity and safety is mandatory, right? So each one of them places very high emphasis on both productivity, but also on safety of people, because those are really critical, because a safety hazard would actually stop any one of these industries. And number three, security. So if you imagine even an oil and gas platform, or even your power plant, distribution plant, it becomes really important to make sure that we can secure those facilities. So three main characteristics that we believe, as you look at the domain of business and mission critical application, those are the three drivers that you will find. And each one of them look at how can they transform. All of them are looking at how can they increase efficiency, how can they take advantage of digital areas to look at what we call faster agility to respond. They're looking at productivity and safety, sustainability, how can they make sure they can reduce their carbon footprint. So many different areas of digital transformation is just focused on this one particular area. And that's really the focus of when we take when we say take advantage of digital transformation, that's exactly the area that we are focused on. And that's really the area that I think we believe has been lagging in terms of the area of transformation. Now, and that's really the key step. But the key step is how then do you connect all of them to be able to collect all of this information so that you can make sense about it. And then as you digitize, you can make then additional capabilities that built into your systems that you're looking to build. Now, we at Nokia, together with Bell Labs, we looked at what we call Future X for industries. And Future X really looks at how should we architect all of this digital transformation over a 10-year journey. And it's got 4 main domains, which is absolutely critical for us. Right at the crux of it is what we call a high-performing network. A high-performing network built on wireless and wired. But more importantly, it's pervasive, it's deep into the area that we are wanting to connect. It connects everything, sensors, information, collects data, collects real-time information, or even preventive maintenance information. All of this data, common platform, one single platform that's able to connect all of these things. Number 2, we believe it has to be a smart network. And what we mean by smart is taking advantage of flexibility to be able to become programmable, easy plug-and-play approach, and agile enough that as you adapt to the need that you have in the industry, the networks can adapt to that. And that's really what we're looking at the heart of it. When we look at the second layer, we're looking at cloud. And here we believe many of these industries will require a mix of all 3 of this cloud infrastructure. Whether it's edge cloud, whether you have something within the premises, whether it's distributed edge, or if you have multi-tenancy or multiple location of your branches, or even taking advantage of hybrid cloud. You will need a model that takes advantage of all of these things. Once you have all of this information, what do you do with that? And that's really where we call the digital value platform. And the digital value platform looks at how can we harness this information, make sense about it, correlate it, look at historical trend, look at forecasting to look where it will go in the future, but taking advantage and making sense of it, extracting the value out of that platform. Once you're able to extract the value, then you can start building applications on top of it to look at preventive maintenance, workforce efficiency, safety, optimization. All of these other paradigms are built on it. But the crux of it, and the real heart of it, is actually you need a high-performing network that can collect and sense everything that's around you. And not just sense, but also react to the network. And that's really the key factor that we're going to just talk about, why we need a really robust industrial-grade private wireless infrastructure. Because if you look at the industry today, what you will find, and this is surveys that are done with different enterprises, the enterprises today or mission critical networks today use a multitude of different technologies. Wired, legacy infrastructure, we know some that are still running on STM, SDH, PLC, many different types of technology that is being used. When you look at the wireless domain, you will see even a more plethora of technology that is being used, whether it's P25 or Tetra for voice, some use Wi-Fi, some use Bluetooth, Sigfox, LoRa, you name it, there is a real plethora of technology that each one of them uses. Now that poses a real challenge, because if you have different technologies, how then do you build a platform that harmonizes the way that you can extract the information from the network? Extract the information from your sensors. Which type of sensors do you want to use? And that's really where we're looking at. And that's where we see the drive towards a common, one single technology. You might have 2 different networks, but we see more and more a growing need to have a single technology that's able to meet all of these requirements, whether it's pervasive connectivity, replacing your old systems, connecting via IoT to some of your low-powered sensors. But how do you then have one particular technology that can build and support this? And that's where we believe with private wireless that's based on 4G and 5G is the way that the industry is taking forward and looking forward, because that is able then to harmonize the whole industry in terms of the ecosystem players that is in there, in terms of the sensors that you're going to deploy. And then it also provides you a very nice solid platform that you have a singular platform that's you can able to build the capabilities that is above, because all of the information that is below comes in a singular format, right? And completely digitized. That will really revolutionize and accelerate what we call Industrial 4.0 digitization. And that's really what we're talking about. And when we look at it, when we look at this private wireless network, we look at a dedicated network, which would be then looking at different areas. It will be looking at industrial areas, industrial sites, campuses, for example, at a factory, which is really localized within that particular location. Or if you're a utility, an example is Sempra in the US, they look at how can they now provide a private connectivity in a much larger scale. And the reason, because they want to be able to deploy the networks, sensors, or what we call field area networks, a lot more deeper into the infrastructure that they have, which then provides them much more granular understanding of power consumption. If you have if you have renewable energy that's coming back into the grid, how do you manage that in a much more efficient way? So they are looking at a network that's a much more regional basis. If you're public safety, example is Korea with SafeNet. They have a nationwide network where all government agencies use that particular network. But that's a national-based network that's dedicated for all public service use. And that really gives them the advantage and the agility that any one of them that's using the network, doesn't matter where they are in that country, they're able to be connected and be able to communicate on one single platform. And that's really the vision that we are seeing more and more of different countries, enterprises, that are starting to leverage. Now, you might be asking, all that sounds fantastic, Matthew. How do we take advantage of it? And there are three things that we are working towards, and I think the whole industry is working towards making and unlocking this capability. The first building block is spectrum. And spectrum, we look at it from three areas. So number one, we've got countries that are looking at how can they partner with service providers as an operator to support these particular industries. We've got countries, as an example, is Japan, that says, hey, can I now dedicate spectrum dedicated for verticals, whereby an enterprise can say, hey, I want to deploy my own facility, but then can I have spectrum that I can deploy just within my own locality so that I can operate that within by myself? And then there's also thought about, can I now look at unlicensed spectrum? Whether it's on the different bands that I have, but how do I start taking a look at spectrum? And we've seen more and more in countries which have more dedicated spectrum for verticals, we see a higher adoption of interest within the ecosystem to adopt some new technologies. Then we look at ecosystem, and ecosystem partners are really critical, because many of these industries not just need the common devices or the devices that you have, that you and I have, but they also need specialized devices. And that's where we see more and more industries and partners coming into the ecosystem, looking at how can they start build sensors, smart meters with NB-IoT sensors in them. So a lot of work that is going on, and there's a lot of interest in that, because a lot of manufacturers, device ecosystem players understand that, hey, I can now adhere to a standard that now I can go globally anywhere because they use the same standard. The third most important part is, how do I then make it simple for enterprises to use? Typically, one of the biggest concerns that enterprises have is, hey, I don't want to use 4G or 5G, which in their minds is very complicated. You need a real bunch of specialist engineers to come and configure it. How do I make it operationalized? So as an industry, how then do we go about and make it really simple for them to be able to use? Whether it's tweaking a parameter to be able to do handover seamlessly, how can I make that as an automated, easy experience for the enterprise to be able to manage it themselves? And that's really what we at Nokia have been looking at. And while doing all of this, what is important is it's a dedicated network, enterprises are guaranteed that the data continues to be there, right? And that's most important. And then finally, it's full visibility for the enterprises, because as an enterprise, you would want to be able to understand exactly what's happening with your sensors, where is the information coming, what's the quality of the service that the network is performing within that area and that zone. And that's really what we're looking at to say, how can we enable this and empower this in the digital transformation area. And that's exactly what we and Nokia are doing it right now. So in Nokia, this is not a new concept. In fact, this is a concept that we have been advocating and working with many different enterprises to make this a reality. We've got 180 plus networks that are already deployed, taking advantage of this digital transformation journey. And we've just got a few of them examples up there. So if you see one of them, for example, Toyota. Toyota is looking at how can they enhance and digitize and improve the efficiency of their production flow. If you look at it, we've got mining companies that are looking at how can I take advantage of autonomous haulage, autonomous drilling, how can I deploy this? And many of them have already seen significant gains just by adopting this technology as part of their digital transformation journey. And we have a number of references that we can talk to. There's a few that I will talk at the end of it in terms of customers that have already adopted it. So there is already a market positioning or leadership that we see more and more growing in the world, and not just in APJ, but also in the world right now, right? So then that you see Nokia being active almost in every continent in the world right now. Now, if you might be asking, okay, all this is fantastic, Matthew, sounds great. What do we need? What are the building blocks that we need to enable this, right? And that's really where we come when you look at a particular enterprise and you look at the whole infrastructure that they would need, depending on the size. We as Nokia provide the capability to provide it as an end-to-end service. As an end-to-end service, both from devices, specialized devices, ruggedized devices, to radio, to backhaul infrastructure that if you need, especially if you deploy a large infrastructure in a mining environment, you would need every single one of it. You also need a core network that either you locate it in a centralized location or deployed as a plug and play method, deployed at the edge where your application needs it, right? And that's really the complete ecosystem of devices, radio, backhaul, core that we can offer. And on top of that, we also have services and analytics engines that we have built based on the extensive experience that we have in these different verticals that form and provide you a capability not just to be able to deploy, but also to be able to deploy the networking, cloud, and also infrastructure to be able to extract some of these values. And of course, we'll work with the different industries to look at how else can we take advantage of the different streams that they have. Now, in the model that we're deploying, whether it's with enterprises or with operators, we look at three different models. The first model is completely a dedicated network from your devices, radio, core, and even your management system application, everything hosted within your premises. And we've got customers that do that, especially large customers that have significant area that they want to cover with the number of base stations, but they also want everything to be within their control, where they have complete visibility over it. We've got customers that say, I like that, but can I have something a little bit more lightweight that I can consume just like an application? I can consume it as a subscription. We'll work with that. We have got offerings that look at how can I take advantage of, can I keep my data locally? That means my devices, radio, and core, and my data is kept local within the enterprise. But then can I consume everything else, management, control, my O&M capability, operation and maintenance completely on a cloud? And we offer that as a service also. So we call it private wireless as a service. And then, of course, there are enterprises that will say, I don't want the complexity of it. Can you, as an operator, mobile operator, come and offer this as a service for me? Either using the concept of slicing, or there are many other different services that an operator can do. But the theme and the key consideration for a private wireless network we're looking at is the radio is dedicated. That means there is a portion of the spectrum or a portion of the bandwidth that is dedicated for that enterprise and is not shared with other users. And that's really the fundamental three concepts that we have been sharing with different enterprises. Depending on the needs that they have, the solutions can be adapted. And in Nokia, what we have done, we've actually just launched a few weeks back what we call the first 5G standalone private wireless solution. And it comes in two variants. We have what we call the Digital Automation Cloud. And the Digital Automation Cloud really provides private wireless as a service in a plug-and-play method. We deploy the edge within your premises. We deploy the radio within the premises of the enterprise. But everything else is managed through a cloud platform. Your operation and maintenance, how you configure the network, how do you get the KPIs from the network, understanding the behaviors that is happening in the network, all of that is managed through a cloud, which makes the deployment method really easy to use while ensuring the security of the data that is within your premises. To take a look at what we call a modular private wireless infrastructure. And here we look at deploying either within your premises or within the operator, a model where you are able to customize every single aspect from an end-to-end perspective. And that's really meeting needs of enterprises that need a lot more customization within the infrastructure. And both these models are available today for enterprises to take advantage of, and while leveraging the breadth of the Nokia radio platform, right? So that's really what we are offering in the market positioning as we go along with this journey. And what we begin to see is we have the capability to bring that, not just the technology, the know-how, the capability, but also the understanding of the verticals. So we understand the verticals, whether it's in transportation, public sector, government, utilities, railways, every single one of them have a nuances, or even manufacturing have a nuances that we understand. And what we believe is with an industrial grade private wireless solution, we'll be able to meet each one of these requirements and support them in this digital transformation journey. And while the technology is today at 4G, many of them have also taken the step of 5G. So I've done 4 examples here. Lufthansa Technik has looked at how can they deploy 5G as a technology to be able to deploy different capability, whether it's with MR, virtual reality, that assists the technicians on the ground to be able to perform their jobs a lot more effectively. Sandvik Mining is looking at how can they do high performing networks that they are enabled then to be able to do more autonomous drilling, autonomous haulage within an underground mine facility. Right? That's what they are looking at. Toyota is looking at how can I revamp and rethink, reimagine the way I do my production, that makes sure that I can take advantage of the flexibility of reconfiguring my entire manufacturing floor based on the demands that I have. Railways are getting ready for what we call FRMCS, on how they're looking at, can I now do not just secure communications, but secure signaling that over a 5G infrastructure. And that's really the journey that they are looking at. So every single one of these verticals are looking at how can they take advantage of industrial grade private wireless to be able to assist them in the transformation journey towards Industry 4.0. And in a closing remark, so the industry is ready right now. So we believe there is an opportunity for every single one of these industries who have not taken that step of transformation in the digital journey to be able to take that. And you can take that now while 5G evolves from standards and enhances the capability. There is a lot of capability that is already available right now, where LTE and 4G are already giving tremendous benefits to different industries out there. And what is most critical is they're adopting what we call the 3GPP standard solution, because that really gives them the scale in terms of the ecosystem that they can leverage in the whole industry. Now, what we're going to do before we just close off, and before we close off, is just look at one last video. And then what we'll do is we'll take a couple of Q&A. I've seen a few guys coming on board. So just list down, put it in the chat window, your Q&A, and then we'll just be coming back to you to take a look at some of the topics that we've been discussing, and then also how we can take a look at how we can look at different areas to answer some of your Q&As.
The world is going digital. Is your business ready for the transformation? Are your processes as agile, reliable, safe, secure, and efficient as possible? Combine the reliability and performance of fixed networks with the flexibility of wireless networks. Connect people and things quickly and securely. Increase uptime with reliable connectivity. Solve problems before they happen with predictive maintenance. Ensure the right capacity anywhere it's needed. Benefit from connectivity that's always available to everyone and everything. Keep your people safe. Detect threats as soon as they arise. Stop them automatically and instantly. Deploy rock-solid cyber defenses. Keep your business secure with data that's locally stored and fully protected. How do you achieve this digital transformation? The answer is to use flexible, scalable wireless networks to tap into the Internet of Things. To run data analytics to streamline production and improve services. To use fast local data processing for applications that can't tolerate delays, and to take advantage of augmented reality to give people capabilities and experiences unimaginable only a few years ago. Nokia has the right expertise to make it all happen end to end. Let us help. We create the technology to connect the world.
All right, excellent, guys. I'm just looking through the chat window, so if you've got any questions, we're here for the next probably another 10 more minutes before the session ends on question and answers. And I've just got a few here, and I just read them out. So one of the questions that has come up is from a YouTube user is, what spectrum bands are being considered for use for IIoT in countries in Asia? So thank you very much for your question. So there's a number of spectrum that is being considered right now. So when we look at Japan as an example, so Japan is looking at N257, which is the millimeter wave and centimeter wave. They're looking at N79. The upper bands really for high performing networks. On the lower bands, there's a lot of number of countries that have looked at, they are looking at 700 megahertz and also 850. So these are two lower bands that has become really popular for a lot of enterprises who are looking at deploying their own private wireless infrastructure. So that's number one. When we look at 5G, we see a lot of enterprises that are looking at more the higher end spectrum, centimeter wave and millimeter wave, as part of the way that they can adopt private wireless networks. In Australia, as an example, enterprises can take advantage of spectrum because due to geographical size, there are areas where they can take advantage of spectrum which is not being used by service providers in those areas, that they can then start deploying their own private networks. We've seen in Finland, as an example, two service providers have partnered together where they have carved out a particular part of an operator spectrum to be able to use for enterprises. And this company then goes out to different enterprises and offers it as a service, which includes the complete package of a dedicated radio core spectrum just for the enterprises. But then everything else is managed by the enterprise, by this particular enterprise that offers it as a service. So the system integrator that offers it as a service. So I hope that kind of like gives you, so that's really the advantage that 3GPP gives, the plethora and the option that you have with spectrum that you can pick and choose. And that's really the advantage that I see. Now, I've got another question here that says, how does a private wireless network differ from public wireless? Now, that's a good one. So when we say a private wireless network, we're really talking about a network that is dedicated for that particular enterprise. And in most cases, the enterprise is guaranteed bandwidth, guaranteed quality of service, but most importantly, the dedicated network means that all of the data within the enterprise stays and continues to be only at the enterprise. So they never leave the enterprise premises, which makes sure that the network is really secure and robust. And it also means that the enterprises can be guaranteed and be assured of the performance, especially because if you have low latency applications, for example, if you want to make sure that the latency is really robust, how then do you make sure that it's robust if you have the data goes back into a centralized cloud and all of that? That's really what we say the big differentiation between a public network versus a dedicated private network. And to run these private networks, you would need that, because otherwise you can't really take advantage of many of the other applications. An example, autonomous haulage. Autonomous haulage truck needs a round-trip delay of every message to be less than 3 seconds. And the moment they don't have heartbeat recognition of information between 3 to 4 seconds, completely the whole truck stops. And that's what you don't want to. And that's where we believe you want to have something localized within that particular enterprise itself. Another question that I've just seen is, how does private LTE compare, or private wireless compare with Wi-Fi, especially Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 5? How does it compare? So this is an interesting question. So some of the customers that we have actually gone ahead and looked at their digitization journey, some of them have actually taken Wi-Fi as a first step. They've taken Wi-Fi as a first step to just be able to connect and get some data. Now, some of them have already seen some benefits, but what they've realized is when it becomes mission-critical networks, and mission-critical networks really are networks that you can't really afford to have packet drops or loss of communication, because any one of those things are really is life-threatening in some of the cases. And that's really where we found that private wireless infrastructures outperform a Wi-Fi infrastructure. So we've run, for example, with Komatsu, who's one of the largest haulage truck providers in the mining industry. And they've deployed Wi-Fi, then they've migrated that to a private wireless solution. What they've seen is they've seen 100% drop in their packet error rate. So when you look at any application that requires handover, constant handover between one base station, one access point to the next access point, we find that private wireless networks based on 4G, 5G outperforms Wi-Fi networks, in more than 100% of the time. So these customers who have deployed have seen tremendous savings because they are able to take advantage of the digitization and information flow without any error rate, without drops in packets, constant communications that is available regardless of its stationary or as they mobile and as they move around. So completely different behaviors that we have seen in terms of performance from each one of these networks. I've seen one from Yishin Chan, Plum Consulting. They've asked about, we've seen many examples which are large-scale applications, but are they more catering more to SMEs, and then what are the other barriers to be addressed by a regulatory government and MNOs? So I think, thanks a lot, Yishin, for the question. What we have seen is the early adopters. So when you look at the adoption curve, there are early movers and then there are the followers that come behind. I think most of the early movers have been the large industrial players that have taken advantage of that. So we look at mining community, we look at ports, airports who are starting to take this journey, utility companies. So the large-scale industries have taken the lead. And we believe that will actually start filtering down as the next generation of people taking over. So we see slowly a bigger adoption with manufacturing. So manufacturing is becoming a lot more active in terms of how they can take advantage of private wireless within their blueprint of their digitization journey. So we see a lot more take-up that is now interest coming in from many of them. And many of them will also be, and that will accelerate as more ecosystem partners come on board. So when you see more of Bosch and the other industrial partners coming on board with their devices, with their ecosystem, with their platforms, then you will see a massive ramp up of where we see private wireless being adopted. So that's kind of like where we see the industry is as an adoption. So the large-scale industries have taken the lead because they are looking at it as massive savings, where we believe the next wave that is coming is with manufacturing and all of the other SMEs that will take advantage of it, because sooner or later, every single one of the devices that they have will already have some form of sensors that will be connected within their premises, right? Within their particular devices or manufacturing equipment that they have, they would already have most of these things embedded within that platform. So that's where we see the adoption. Now, what are the barriers? Barriers, I think one of the things that I think that's a big paradigm shift. If you look at the applications that typically we're trying to address. So when you look at digitization, where do we see that digitization that is coming up is actually in more mission and business critical applications. And that's, I think, as an industry, how do we provide that as a service? Because typically it's been within the enterprises who controls and manages that. So if you look at most enterprises, operational technology is very as a DNA embedded into within that organization. Now, so there will be a period of time in terms of paradigm shift to say, can someone else provide this connectivity, but it's mission critical and it's business critical, but I would want someone else to coming in. So that's number one, that I think there's a slight paradigm shift that needs to happen, even from service providers on how they address those kind of requirements in OT. And finally, we look at regulatory. So we see more and more regulatory bodies that are considering, should I look at a model like the US that look at CBRS spectrum? So CBRS spectrum that empowers every single enterprises to be able to then deploy their own private wireless network infrastructure. There's a licensing mechanism that needs to be aligned, but other than that, each one of these enterprises can deploy either on their own, or they can have a system integrator or a service provider provide that. And I think that's the next regulatory hurdle that we need to think in terms of the paradigm of how we address spectrum for the needs of these enterprises. And that's kind of the main two ones that I think are hurdles that we will need to overcome. And I think the industry is learning as more and more enterprises are taking advantage of it. Now I've got a cursor just saying it's the last, maybe another couple of 2 or 3 minutes more. Any other last questions from you guys, please do post. There's one that looks at what is the difference between 5G standalone versus other 5G. So if you look at 5G technology, there's typically 5G standalone, which means it's 5G without relying on an underlay LTE technology at all. So that's what we call non-standalone. So there's a bigger adoption within the enterprises that are looking at deploying 5G. I think the direction that they're looking at is, how can I deploy a standalone network, which means I don't need to rely on any other network or any other spectrums to be able to deploy and take advantage of the 5G infrastructure. And that's really why Nokia has also gone ahead. We've launched the 5G SA as a commercial offering for enterprises, for service providers, or even system integrators out there that can take advantage as early adopters of the digital transformation journey. All right. I think those are the main questions that I've seen so far, and I hope you do take advantage of the sharing. And if you're looking forward to any of the private wireless infrastructure that you're looking at as part of your digital transformation journey, we are here to be able to support you. There's a lot of material that's already available in the Nokia website. Just look for private wireless and Nokia Allware, and you'll be able to see a plethora of information that I'm sure will be able to meet some of your needs. Otherwise, just reach out to your nearest Nokia representation, and we'll be more than happy to, to come and take a look at what the needs that you're looking at, and to be able to make sure that you are the early adopters in taking advantage of the digital transformation that Industry 4.0 really brings on board. All right. Excellent. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope there's been a session that, that's just been thought-provoking for you guys, and just being opening up the windows of how you can take advantage of this digital journey. Thank you very much.